The Friday edition of Orange and Blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason talking about the Denver Broncos, and it is Friday. People feeling good. Might be payday for you, but Mace, you said it. Today's a celebration, so it makes me want to do my best Dave Chappelle doing Rick James. It's a celebration. So what are we celebrating, buddy?
We are celebrating the fact that the Broncos were not the worst special teams unit in the NFL. That's what we're celebrating.
Okay.
Because the annual Rick Gosselin special teams rankings comes out. He's been compiling them since 1985. He worked for a long time for the Dallas Morning News, but now he still does them on his own website. And they incorporate 22 different special teams metrics. And basically what he does is really simple. 1 to 32, you get 1 point for 1, 32 for 2, and then takes them and adds them all up. The Broncos, 25th in special teams rankings, not 32nd. So between that, Football Outsiders DVOA ranking the Broncos 29th, and although they were 32nd when Dwayne Stukes was fired, Rosberg improved them. And then Pro Football Focus, which has the Broncos 17th, and I don't know what virus has infected their computer. But still, as bad as the Broncos special teams were, Cease, apparently there were units that were worse, including on Rick Gosselin's ranking, 6 playoff teams that had worse special teams than the Broncos.
All right. So there you go. Everything's worth celebrating, especially when things have been so bad. And Rick Gosselin, that's why I gave the Keanu kiss earlier when you said his name, just because, like, I love Rick Gosselin. Love him. There's some longtime NFL reporters and writers that we've been around enough to know, like, they're just good people. They're just the type of people you want to listen to, you want to read, and you want to soak up. Those long form stuff, it's kind of gone by the wayside and more of the blog stuff, but we'll always give respect to those guys.
You know, the thing I will always remember is back when Rick Gosselin was covering the league full time, and he'd be at the combine, and he had a binder, and in the binder was all the notes that he had on draft prospects. So he would so it's time to interview, a guy who's going to be a 6th round pick out of Louisiana Lafayette or whatever. And you just go get his notes and start doing the interview. I mean, and ask some questions in the small groups. I had a lot of respect for that. And I think the thing to me, and one of the reasons why I like the Shrine and the Senior Bowls, is getting to see and getting to know these guys that are kind of down the priority list, that are the mid to late round guys that not everybody kind of focuses upon. But these players end up mattering, and a lot of them end up contributing very well. And the preparedness and the detail that Rick Gosselin had, that was something that I've always aimed for in my own reporting. So it's, I take his rankings very seriously on special teams as well. But yeah, not the worst. Although, and this is a philosophical discussion, Cease, the 2 worst teams in the Gosselin rankings on special teams are the 2 number 1 seeds in the playoffs. 6 of the 7 teams below the Broncos made the playoffs. The number 1 special teams unit in the Gosselin rankings belong to the Houston Texans. Do we maybe overestimate the importance of special teams?
I don't think so. Not at all. And in fact, Mace, this kind of ties into a conversation we'll have to have after the Dan Quinn thing. I'm not sure if the teams that had a bye even make it out of this weekend.
Ooh.
They should.
Okay.
They should.
That's spicy.
But there's an opportunity that the teams that had a bye, Kansas City and Philadelphia, don't make it out of this weekend, or at least don't make it to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So, and does that come from special teams? It could.
Hey.
So are they overlooked? No way.
Well, Trevor Lawrence has never lost a Saturday game.
Right. Mr. Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Saturday night.
We get real sing-songy. Now, I did not hear you just on the drive, but Chris was listening, and he said, can you continue the conversation you were just having on air? I like the deep insight with the head coaching search. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about Dan Quinn today.
Yes.
So what was this conversation with you and the mountain lion hunter that is Derek Wolfe?
Well, it's a continuation of a conversation that I've had more than a few times in recent days. And it is about kind of the value of Sean Payton versus the other coaches. I think philosophically, you have to have a discussion of, okay, let's say the deal isn't 2 1s, but it's a 1 and a 3 or a 1 and a 2.
Okay.
And it may well be a 1 and next year's 2, just because of how future years picks are valued compared to this year's. The in terms of trade value, and a year ahead is always worth less than the current year is. So if that's what's being thrown out there, that you have to have the discussion of saying, all right, is Sean Payton a first and a second round pick better than Jim Caldwell, than
No.
David Shaw, than Dan Quinn? And I think that as you really kind of dive into that, I agree. You said no. I'm right there with you. I don't think he is that value better. And that's the discussion to have. Not, oh, we're giving up these picks for Sean Payton. No, is Sean Payton worth the difference between one coach and another coach that you get? Two of the coaches we're talking about have taken their team to Super Bowls. One of the coaches took Detroit to a winning record. No other full-time coach in the last half century has left Detroit with a winning record. And David Shaw is kind of a little more of a wild card, but ran a pro-style program at Stanford. And until the landscape changed in ways that do not have any commonality with the NFL, NIL, transfer portal, etc., until the landscape changed, had Stanford basically kind of on cruise control as a team that was going to be somewhere in the top 20 almost every year, despite the challenges that existed at that school in terms of being able to get kids in academically. So,
right.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, David Shaw has 9 years as an NFL assistant on his ledger. So he's not going to walk in and not know how to handle pro athletes, pro egos, and all that. He gets it. So this David Shaw would not be a typical college to pro transition. Like we talk about, Matt Rule. I think he had 1 year on the Giants staff, and it was very kind of high school Harry in the way he talked to players. Urban Meyer, joke. Bobby Petrino, no social skills whatsoever, no management skills on an NFL level. I think when I look at David Shaw, you're looking more at, I'm not making a Bill Walsh comparison, but there is something about Stanford coaches that go to the NFL. Bill Walsh, Jim Harbaugh, even going way back. Some of you watching this and listening to this, may remember John Ralston. It didn't work out for Ralston in the end, but he got things turned around in Denver and got them winning in a way they had not won before and set the table for what was to come. So the coaches that have come from Stanford, I think it's just part of it is the challenges that you have to face there. It's different. Running a program at Stanford is different than running a program at Alabama or Florida or somewhere else. But historically, it seems to translate. So again, I don't know if I just don't think that Sean Payton is that much better than those three coaches in particular. And the other thing is also, if the Broncos hired Shaw, hired Caldwell, hired Quinn, I'm happy with any of them, Cease. I can get behind any of those choices. They're good choices. They're good coaches.
This wouldn't be spin or team spin. Obviously, wouldn't come from us. Other outlets would because they have to, but it wouldn't come from us. I have 2 words for you that will back up completely what you just said. I said them to DMAC this morning on coffee break. The worst thing that happened for the Sean Payton hopes, 2 words: Jerry Rossberg. Jerry Rossberg, a solid coach that showed up, never had been a head coach, and showed up and got good football out of this team. So is Sean Payton worth more than Dan Quinn in a first rounder? No. Dan Quinn in a first rounder, Shaw in a first rounder, Caldwell in the first rounder. Those are more valuable than Sean Payton. All credit to Sean Payton, but you can get good football from this team, from Russell Wilson, with any of those other guys not named Sean Payton, and still retain your first round pick, which could go to a tackle, as I would like, or even an edge, as Daniel Jeremiah's first mock came out today and had an edge going to Broncos.
And quite possibly maintain continuity on the defensive side as well. With all those possibilities. That is very much in play. If you have any of those coaches, is keeping the defensive staff pretty close to intact, which you are talking about a defense that was really top flight before the injuries caught up. Edge rusher is an intriguing discussion because I think because there is an argument to be made for taking an edge in terms of positional value, although again, you've really got to rebuild the offensive line. But that's not a pick that I would scoff at in the way I would scoff at taking a running back in round one. That's one where I'd say the positional value doesn't add up, but an edge that does make some sense. I mean, there are multiple positions you could argue for, Steve, in round one. You could argue
There's
for
one guard that you
and
would get,
one
Osiris
guard.
Torrance, the one
Yeah.
guard in this class. There's
Yeah.
tackles and there's edge. Anything else, I don't
No.
want to entertain that. They need a tackle, they need an edge. I would take a guard just because there's one in this class. But yeah, it's I wrote about it. It's not out yet, so make sure to stay tuned to denversports.com. But I did write about DJ's Daniel Jeremiah's first blog.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, Mace? This is some inside trivia. Do you know where Daniel Jeremiah's first media appearance was for 2 years before he was on NFL Network?
I thought you were going to ask him what school he went to. I was going to say App State.
You know that. Yeah.
Because he's got the Mountain Man logo somewhere in his backdrop.
Yep.
No, tell me the first appearance. Tell me.
He was with us for 2 years on the Audible.
Oh wow, yeah.
He was on Twitter for like 3 days, and Sigmund was like, "There's this former scout, and I'm gonna reach out to him." And it happened to be Daniel Jeremiah, and that was his first media appearance. Was on my podcast, and then for 2 years we had him until he went on for greater things, and then went back to the NFL.
Does he give you a kickback for helping launch him?
No, but he did a nice tribute video on our 4,000th episode a couple years ago. So love DJ,
okay, cool.
Love Daniel. One of the good guys. Like in this industry, Mason, when we see good guys who like work real hard, real good people.
Yeah.
You know, I think of Charles Davis, right? I think of Daniel Jeremiah. I think of those people. I'm like, man, I just keep going, please, because there's some alohas in this business. We had a question here that leads me into my next thing. DAL. Why is nobody talking about the D'Amico Ryan's interview, good or bad? Mace, I have an answer. I'm curious to hear yours. It's because things are pretty tight here in the Walton Penner group. Now, Greg Penner does talk to a couple of people, nobody locally. If there is anyone here locally that's saying, I talked to ownership, they're lying to you, okay? There are 2 people specifically that talked to Greg Penner, but things are a little bit tighter now than they used to be. And it reminds me when our dear friend Eric Studesville was let go by the Denver Broncos and everybody in the media was complaining. And I went on the air and said, yeah, it's because he talks to everybody. So there's not very many leaks with the Broncos as there used to be, Mace. That's my answer anyway.
Yeah, that's changed. It's part of the culture. It started to change really when George Payton got there, but you know, Payton has his specific person. We know.
Oh God, yes.
Right. And that's why I thought it was, when you look back at how the news of the Nathaniel Hackett dismissal broke, it was very notable that it broke at a different time of day than some of the other news. Some of the other news, like that news has been breaking, you know, broke early, right? I think, you know, if I'm not mistaken, Vic Fangio, didn't that go down at like very early in the morning? Like,
yes.
And then I think Nathaniel Hackett was announced very early in the morning, or not announced, but it broke. But it's so different timing there. But yes, there are fewer people and there are fewer leaks. It is as airtight a search as you will find. And that, look,
I like it that way, dude. I know it's fun to peek through keyholes and to be like, and then their interview went 6 hours and they went to the Trace Portrios and they ordered the tamales and then George Payton had an iced tea. And then like, so that's cool. But actually, like the business like these are the adults in charge, right? We're not like Mr. Leaky, tell everybody everything. Like it's fun. It's interesting. But I really prefer the way the Walton Penner Group's doing it. Is like, we don't need the TV cameras. We don't need to blog about it. We're doing business. And when the business is done, we're going to know.
You think we're going to find out what any of the candidates ate?
Possibly.
Tamales,
after the fact, though.
Yeah. tamales, hamburger at a steakhouse, you know.
Yeah, we always have some sort of I think we're all foodies in the Denver media. What's Dan Quinn going to do in his interview? What's he going to eat at his interview? And again, with the Dan Quinn thing, it's like, okay, go. He's a good coach. He's a good option for the Broncos if, in fact, he does get the job. But it's D'Amico Ryan's day yesterday. It's Dan Quinn day today, Mace.
Yeah, and first things first, I imagine he will do better in the interview than he did last year. I think we all kind of learn from from the experience. I also think interviewing with this smaller group is going to suit Dan Quinn better.
Okay, tell me why.
Well, let's just kind of take a look at the people that were in the Broncos interview process last year. You had something of a younger crowd, right? You had, it was more, you had some 30 somethings, Kelly Klein, Darren Muji, Rick Hurtado, the person in charge of the Broncos cap. This interview process, it's 250 somethings and a 60 something, right? Greg Penner, George Payton, and Condoleezza Rice. And next week, the second part of it, you're going to have a 50 something, and you're going to have someone in their 70s, and Rob Walton. And I think by and large, you're talking about a different demographic that I think is going to be impressed with different things, and I think will be more impressed with the resume than what is actually said, kind of in the interview process. Condoleezza Rice walks in. She knows what Dan Quinn's done. She knows what he stands for. She knows what the positives and negatives are on him in terms of him as a head coach. George Payton, he knows that. He's worked with Dan Quinn as well, and I'm sure. And if Greg Penner didn't, I'm sure he wasted no time figuring that out. And I think he actually has a chance to maybe make a better impression than he did in the interview last year.
Better impressions, better directions, better results for the Denver Broncos. But no matter which way they go, it's going to be a solid choice. And yes, Brad D brings up Peyton has been pulling for Quinn. And as we've talked about on this show, I don't know if that really helps Quinn. If you're George Payton, just kind of keep quiet. If they ask you something, say something. But I wouldn't be standing on the table for anybody because you're lucky you still have a job.
Well, let's face it. The second round of interviews next week, there's a reason why George Payton's not going to be involved with that. And I'm sure part of it is that when you bring Rob Walton and Kerry Walton Penner in, and by the way, when we're talking about that's where the big money comes in, right? The people with the names, with Walton and their surnames, okay? These are people that want to know that they're spending their money wisely, and they want to know what the real plan, what is the plan in terms of what you want to see in personnel, right? Because part of it is very simple. If they're talking to the coach and the coach says, "I've got someone different in mind for personnel," Kerry Walton Penner and Rob Walton still have to write that check, right? But they want to know that it's being spent wisely. And so if David Shaw comes in and says, and talk, I mean, David Shaw may cite someone in personnel who's connected to the 49ers back in the early 2010s. Even though he didn't work on the staff, Jim Harbaugh did. We know how close Jim Harbaugh and David Shaw are. So it would be David Shaw's goal and task to sell Kerry Walton Penner and Rob Walton on why my personnel person is the type of person I want. And also, like Dan Quinn, I think is someone who understands this really well because he worked with Kyle Shanahan. I imagine Dan Quinn will talk about being in lockstep with the personnel person, and for that may mean keeping George Payton if you're Dan Quinn. Can you sell that? Well, the way you'd sell that is look at some successful operations around the NFL: San Francisco, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, Buffalo, Brandon Beane, and Sean McDermott. Having a connection is more and more being shown to lead to success. Having the personnel person and the coach on the same page. So all of them, I imagine that's what they'll try to sell. It's just with Quinn, he might be selling it and saying, George is my guy.
George is my guy. Are we sure? Speaking of my guy, because we always talk about Dan Quinn and we say Brian Schottenheimer. Are we sure? And the only reason I ask is because my guy, Zach Robinson, getting interest from Baltimore, getting interest from the Chargers as their OC. So, passing game coordinator / quarterback coach / former PFF employee / former Chatfield Charger, Zach Robinson, is already have 2 teams after him for OC. I mean, are we sure Dan Quinn, it would be Brian Schottenheimer? I'm, 99%. Is there a small percent it could be somebody else?
Keep your eye on Darrell Bevel.
Okay. It's good
Pass
choice.
game coordinator in Miami, but he doesn't call plays.
Yep.
And there's been interest in him from teams already. And I think he turned down one interview request, but I think he would very much entertain the thought of working with Dan Quinn again. The 2 of them were together in Seattle, of course, back in the early days of the Pete Carroll regime. So that's the name I would keep an eye on. And then, I mean, I'll even go a step further. There's not a connection to Dan Quinn, but it's a connection to kind of Wisconsin. I would not be surprised if Dan Quinn came in, if you saw a Darrell Bevel as OC and maybe Paul Christ, who coached with who was Wisconsin's offensive coordinator and play caller when Russell Wilson was there and was fired by Wisconsin as head coach last fall. I could see something where it's a Darrell Bevel, Paul Christ on the OC and QB positions if Dan Quinn gets the job.
Yeah, I think that's a fine combination and a fine group of experienced men who know what to do with the players that they're given. And I think that's an important part of whether it's Ejiro Evero. And I don't think Evero gets enough credit for that. Like the Broncos have players on the defensive side of the ball. I intrigued DMAC today with my tag and trade of Draymond Jones. Yeah. Because everyone says, just trade a wide receiver. You're not getting anything. You're not getting anything. You're not trading Jerry Jeudy, or at least I don't think you should. Yeah. But if you tag and trade Draymond Jones, yeah. But it's not like Draymond Jones took over the league's greatest defense, but he got really good football from that group because he worked with what they did best and kind of continued on what they had been doing.
Right. But at the same time, I mean, how much does Draymond want to be here too? So
I don't think he does. Honestly, I don't think he does.
And that's why I would, if he doesn't want to be here, I do tag and trade because I can get more value than if he walks. Yep. And you get a third round pick. You might be able to get a second for Draymond Jones.
Yeah.
And I say if you can do that, take it because you're getting more than you give up. At the same time, than you would have gotten otherwise. At the same time, a new coach might change things. A new coach might. A new coach is going to be evaluating everybody. Might say, "I really need Draymond Jones," and then that new coach is going to have to sell his philosophy to Draymond and get him on board. It can be done. Okay. Champ Bailey stayed in Denver, re-signed with the Broncos in early 2011 before the lockout that year because John Elway and John Fox sold him on a vision. Champ, he was frustrated. He was going into his 13th year. He just endured a 4-12 season. It's like, what the heck? I got to get my ring. And it looked like Champ was out the door.
Right.
Until they made the sales pitch that sold Champ on their vision. And you know what? I mean, he got to the Super Bowl. He got to play with Peyton Manning. It worked. It almost worked out for the ultimate, but it still worked out pretty well. Champ played 2 years of very good ball for John Fox and John Elway before injuries caught up to him. So, that's the sort of thing where the landscape can change for a player who looks like they're out the door. And also, if we're talking about Draymond Jones, I think we can also say it's on Dalton Risner. If you look at the landscape and say, well, Risner's better than any free agent out there, maybe we try to re-sign him. So it's weird to say this, Cease, but a new coach could result in a player or two staying that maybe we thought was gone.
Gone and gone. Dalton Risner, Draymond Jones at the top of that list. And unless you get Osiris Torrance, you're not going to find a guard. In free agency, the best one is Dalton Risner. So we'll keep you abreast of the situation as it goes. We didn't get to talk divisional round. That's okay.
Okay,
Super quick. Do you
picks.
want to give me your picks?
Let's do quick picks, lightning round. I think Trevor Lawrence's Saturday streak stops. Give me the Chiefs.
Yep.
I think the Eagles get it done at home. It's going to be a little bit of a slobber.
It'll be tougher, yeah.
Yep. Now let's go to Sunday. Man, if the Bengals offensive line wasn't shredded, I would go with them, but I think Buffalo's going to have enough to eke it out. I think they got their scare. I guess, but I do think the Cowboys, I believe in the Cowboys, believe it or not. I think they pull off the upset. I think it's their time. I think the Cowboys could be in the Super Bowl.
Okay. I will disagree with the Dallas thing because I hate Jerry Jones, but let me give me 49ers. Other than that, we're on the same page. But there could be some upsets. The Giants, look out. And, well, we'll see.
I can't rule out Jacksonville. I mean, I think that's actually going to be a good.
It's all house money, whatever they do.
I think that's going to be a really good game. And who knows Andy Reid better than Doug Peterson?
Yep. The learner has now become the master. Well, they're both.
No, if we're doing the Star Wars, when I met you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master. Only a master of evil doth. So is that to Andy Reid telling Doug Peterson, only a master of evil, Doug?
Yes, exactly. Oh, there we go.
But you know, the thing is, and it's bad news for the Broncos. You don't want Andy Reid becoming more powerful than he could possibly imagine.
No, they're already there.
He can't get more powerful. My goodness gracious.
The dynasty of one, Kansas City. I'd like to keep it that way, Mace.
Yeah.
But either way, we're out of here for today. Appreciate everyone for jumping on board and appreciate all the love via social networking. Yes, I pay attention, even though I say I don't. But yeah, we love it and we appreciate you. We just want to talk football, man. We don't want to do hot take garbage. We don't want to talk trash about this team. We're going to tell you what's up. We're going to tell you who's good. We're going to tell you who's not good. We're going to tell you what's the right decision. We're going to tell you what the wrong decision are. We're not going to fanboy over it. Be like, that's the greatest ever. Go Broncos. That's disingenuous to you, the audience. So if you are watching or listening to anybody that's like, it's always positive and we're always going to win the Broncos, you're watching garbage. Don't want garbage. Watch Orange Blue today because we're going to tell you the truth. We're going to stay positive, baby. Nobody wants to listen to negative stuff all the time. I know there's a lot of comic book podcasts I watch on YouTube that I've stopped watching because it's just negative. Like, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch negative. I don't want to talk negative about the Broncos. Now, I'll tell you, something sucks. And Mace will too. So just stay tuned. We got a lot of great stuff planned for you. Appreciate you all. He's Andrew Mason. I am Cecil Lammey. Be safe. Be kind. Know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned. And as always, I ask that you stay frosty.